Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of the Jayden Bryce Show, the show where we talk about the latest, hottest topics in the world of pop culture and sports. I am your host, as always, Jayden, and I'm glad and happy to be with you guys. I hope you had a great and wonderful Labor Day weekend. Those of you who had work off and had a long 3-day weekend, I hope you all enjoyed it. I enjoyed me a good old nice round of golf yesterday, hung around with some family and friends, had a nice filet mignon. What else did we have yesterday? Green beans and baked potatoes. Had a great dinner yesterday with some mushrooms on top of the steak. Always got to have mushrooms on top of the steak. But I hope you guys had a great weekend. And what happened over this weekend was a fantastic, and I can emphasize the fantastic part, a fantastic weekend of football in college. So what that means today is I have an action-packed show for you guys when it comes to college football. But for my pop culture fans, we are going to discuss something with Batman at the latter portion of the show. So what we are going to get to today, we're going to talk about Mr. Arch Manning, the best quarterback since sliced bread. We are going to discuss his debut and how really horrific it was. Then we are going to discuss North Carolina, Bill Belichick, Chapel Bill. It may not look good for them this year. We are going to discuss Alabama. Not looking like the Alabama we know and love. We're going to talk about Micah Parsons and his back injury. And then lastly, we are going to round the show off with Alan Ritchson speaking with James Gunn about playing Batman in the DCU. But ladies and gentlemen, before we get into all that, I want to thank you so much for tuning into the show. Do not hesitate to hit the like button on my podcast. Check out my podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to my YouTube channel to get all things pop culture and sports. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get right into today's show. I've had a long break. Talked about Micah Parsons in my very last show, and it feels good to talk about something besides Micah Parsons, because all I've seen in the media is Micah Parsons this, Micah Parsons that. You know, the Dallas Cowboys is about to have their game coming up in the next couple of days. So I'm just glad we finally get to talk about something outside of Micah Parsons, because Micah Parsons has just been in the media so much, and the whole drama regarding him and Jerry Jones and things of that nature. I'm gonna discuss some details with David Mulligetta. He was actually on First Take today. That was a very interesting conversation that he had with Stephen A. with Micah Parsons' agent David Mulligetta, if I'm saying his name right. But I'm gonna discuss that with possibly tomorrow's show. We are going to have a show tomorrow if nothing else changes. But I may wait till Thursday just because of the Dallas Cowboys game. Little Thursday night nightcap, pretty much just reacting to the game. So I may just wait and do it Thursday night. I'll let you guys know about that by tomorrow. So we'll wait and see. And I'm going to get to a little outlook of the game going into Thursday night, what to expect and things of that nature. So I might just do a little small show tomorrow just to pretty much talk about that. But ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and get right into it. Forgive me, I do not have any lower thirds or anything made up for you guys. I did not have time to make any, so this show is going to be pretty bland for the most part. I got some things that cooked up for you guys, you know, to keep you just a little bit entertained. But, you know, it's going to be mostly me talking and not a lot of graphics going on, because I, you know, haven't had time to do it. Got a lot of stuff to talk about as well. I could have did it, but I just didn't want to do my show that late tonight. So I do not have a significant amount of graphics today, but they will be on tomorrow's show. All right, guys, let's get into Mr. Arch Manning. Arch Manning, he is part of the Manning family. He is not the son of the two NFL players, one who is a Hall of Famer, the other one should be in the Hall of Fame in the coming years. We are talking about Eli and Peyton Manning. It is their brother's son. I do not remember the guy's name, but go figure. Arch Manning has been hyped up. And he has, and I can attest to this. I think Arch Manning is easily one of the most hyped up quarterbacks to date, maybe since Tim Tebow. The dude's only played a handful of games, and in those games he started because Quinn Ewers hurt his wrist, and he did not play high-level teams. They played low D2 schools, FCS schools. But the way they were hyping up Arch Manning going into this matchup against Ohio State, they made it sound like Arch Manning was pretty much the best thing since sliced bread. Now, going into the game, you're going on the road against the defending national champion Ohio State Buckeyes at the Shoe. That is a daunting task for a kid who has sat the bench for 2 years. He's only started in, 2 or 3 games, the games that he was in for Quinn Ewers, and it was against low-level talent. So in the first official game he gets as the bona fide starter, he's going into Columbus, Ohio, 12 o'clock, the biggest game of Saturday, and he has to go out and play against the defending national champion Ohio State Buckeyes. So go figure. What type of performance did we get from Arch Manning? Arch Manning was not good. He wasn't. Kurt Benkert, he pointed this out, and I noticed it. I don't know if Arch Manning's arm was hurt. I don't know what was going on with him. But he seemed off. His throwing motion seemed off. From the very first snap of the game, he skips the ball to a tight end or receiver. I cannot quite remember exactly who it was, but he was an eligible receiver running a corner route and just straight skips the ball short. So he was off all day. To get to the stat sheet, and let's look at it together. Arch Manning was 17 for 30, 170 yards, averaged 5.7 yards per pass, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Could have been 2 interceptions, but the player ended up dropping it on the Ohio State Buckeyes side. So there you go. That is a very alarming stat with a 58 quarterback rating. He missed a lot of gimme throws. Specifically, the last gimme drive of the game. Give kudos to Arch Manning. The drive before this, he leads a touchdown drive. Defense gets a stop, gets the ball back. You got 3 minutes and some change. 17-14. This is the type of drive you want to see your new starting, potentially rookie starter, even though he's not a rookie. This is his 3rd season, but he's got no experience in this type of situation. Go down and at least score a touchdown. 3rd and 5. The receiver is running a crossing route, pretty much a drag. Wide open, had plenty of space to go down the field, and Arch Manning underthrows him. Pass wasn't on target. Throw it on his right shoulder pretty much to where instead of getting it right here, the receiver would literally have to twist his body, catch the ball right here. He wasn't able to come up with the pass. 4th down. The right tackle just did not get his blocking assignment at all. So the defensive end for Ohio State gets a free rush, and down goes Arch Manning. He ends up passing the ball off while he's getting sacked, but he was short 2 yards. So altogether, it was an abysmal performance for Arch Manning. Now, I had a big problem with this because everybody just went ahead to just pretty much write Arch Manning off, saying he was overrated, this and that. You know, he's a fraud. Look, the kid didn't ask for these expectations to be put on him. Everyone else in the media is the ones who put this narrative out there, saying that Arch Manning was going to be he was going to win the Heisman. He's the Heisman favorite. This, and that. Best quarterback since sliced bread. Don't mean to be beating a dead horse here, but that's what they were saying going into this game. Paul Feinbaum covers the SEC for his job, for his career. And, you know, before the game, Paul Feinbaum pretty much said that Arch Manning was the best quarterback since Tim Tebow. That was very alarming. Very, very alarming. And I was sitting there like, for a kid who hasn't touched the field against a quality team yet, who we've rarely seen play, you're putting this type of expectations on him and making him out to be this type of figure. That was very questionable by Paul Feinbaum, and we saw how it ended up being. But that's neither here nor there. And then he had the performance that he had. A lot of people's been killing him, but I'm one of those, and I'm on this side. I think Arch Manning should get some grace, because it's his first game. He is going up against the defending national champion Ohio State Buckeyes at the Shoe, 12 p.m. in your very first game as a collegiate starter against a FBS school. I don't quite know if in the games that he filled in for Quinn Ewers, if they did play FBS schools, but I promise you, if they were nowhere near the caliber that Ohio State was. Even though Ohio State had a pretty much whole new team on defense. Outside of that, they still had Caleb Downs and some other secondary, the number one guy. I do not know how to say his name correctly, but they still had a couple of guys who were on that national championship roster. But overall, it was a majority new players on the defense. But those guys are still going to be playing on Sundays. Majority of them are going to be NFL pros, potential Pro Bowlers. That's the type of competition Arch was going up against. And I saw all these people on Twitter trying to compare the Arch Manning situation to the Shedeur Sanders situation. And they were sitting there saying, oh, they didn't say that about Shedeur. Shedeur went up against a TCU team who just went to the national championship, and he ended up beating them on the road 45-42. Yeah, a TCU team who many people didn't think should have gotten to the cup, got into the college football playoff, and got boat raced by Michigan in the national championship game. Straight boat race. Wasn't even a game. Wasn't even close. Not even close. So this is not equivalent to Shedeur Sanders beating TCU in his first start at the FBS level. Not even close. But I can tell you this, Arch Manning's got to get it together. He cannot, and I repeat, he cannot be missing those gimme throws like he was missing on Saturday against the Ohio State Buckeyes. I understand, big game. He looked timid in the pocket. You could tell he wasn't comfortable. The atmosphere was getting to him. All this is valid because the Shoe is one of the hardest places to play in college football. So me personally, I'm going to give Arch Manning a pass. But moving forward, and when he does play the next big school that he's got to play, and let's look it up specifically at their roster. Not their roster, but their schedule. They don't have a big game until Florida, October 4th. The next couple of weeks, the next 3 weeks are going to be tune-up games. So you got Florida and you got Oklahoma back-to-back weeks. Arch Manning has got to show up in those games. He has to. He's got to play better than how he played against the Ohio State Buckeyes. Because he has to, and I don't want to say he has to, but because the media has put him in this limelight, thinking like he is the next best Manning because he has the Manning last name. So what do you expect? You expect success. Both of the Manning bros and Arch Manning. I don't know if Archie Manning is Archie Manning in the Hall of Fame. I'm not 100% sure. I think he is. Archie Manning. Is Archie Manning in the Hall of Fame? Hall of Fame, Hall of Fame. It doesn't look like he is. Okay, Archie Manning doesn't look like he is in the Hall of Fame. And we are talking about Arch's grandfather here. But outside of Archie had a very respectable NFL career, but he's trying to live up to the shadow and the limelight that the Manning brothers and Eli and Peyton Manning created. Peyton Manning, arguably a top 5 quarterback to ever play the game, and his brother Eli Manning won 2 Super Bowls, beat Tom Brady twice in the Super Bowl, and he is fixing to get inducted, although he was a more polarizing figure to get in. But Arch has to be better. And to a certain degree, I believe he has to live up to some of the expectations that the media has set. Not all of them. I don't want to put this Heisman expectation on Arch Manning. I think he just has to be decent. Because there's been all these conversations about him going to the draft. His granddad, Archie, over here talking about, he's going to stay another year at Texas. The way he played, it looked like he might want to take another year at Texas. Unless in the next coming weeks, when that game comes up against Florida and Oklahoma, two really look like they're going to be very good teams this year. He looks pretty darn good in those games. Then we might have to revisit this conversation. But as presently constructed, Arch has a lot of making up to do after this performance. A lot. And give credit to credit where credit is due. Matt Patricia, who is the defensive coordinator there for Ohio State, put him in a blender. An absolute blender all evening. Well, all afternoon. And a lot of people were making this argument with the Bill Belichick thing. It was like, oh, Bill Belichick, we'll get to this in the next topic. But, Bill Belichick's going to put Matt, I think his name was Matt Hoover, the quarterback for TCU, Horned Frogs, and put him in the blender. Yeah, that didn't seem to be the case. But obviously, Ohio State doesn't have the same personnel as the University of North Carolina. Okay, Ohio State is up here when it comes to talent and personnel. North Carolina is like way down here. But in all, it wasn't a good debut by Arch Manning. I expect him to be better, and one can only hope and surmise that he is going to get better. I'm looking forward to seeing him play. He was one of my most interesting players going into the college football season. So I need to see better, Arch. I need to see better. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think? Did you think Arch Manning had a horrible game? Do you think he's going to be better? I want to know all of your comments down below. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on into our next topic that I just alluded to 3 minutes ago. North Carolina. Labor Day last night, North Carolina got the privilege of having the standalone primetime game, 8 o'clock. Bill Belichick debut. Everybody's there in North Carolina. Kirk Herbstreit's on the call. Randy Moss is there. Michael Jordan, Lawrence Taylor, Roy Williams, Aaron Boone, the Yankees manager. Everybody was there. The crowd was there. The atmosphere was set. Bill Belichick walked out. Looked like the star, fitting the mold. And going into the opening drive, I had a couple of buddies even go to the game. Carolina goes down the field and like in a snap of my fingers, Gio Lopez in the running game, North Carolina's just out there just looking like a pro-style offense out there. Very first possession of the game. Right down the field. Score 6. Had a couple buddies at the game. They text me, oh, we're back. National championship. North Carolina Tar Heels, here we come. And I was sitting there like, okay. North Carolina might be back. because the way that drive was, wow, it was very, very good. But lo and behold, did we know that drive that they had was very, 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 very deceitful. Because, ladies and gentlemen, North Carolina got absolutely smoked last night. Not smoked, smoked. They were bad. They were bad. Bill Belichick, being the defensive-minded guy that he is, North Carolina historically, for the past couple of years, has not had a great defense, not even good defense whatsoever. Their corners cannot guard a sitting old woman if they could. They can't guard anybody. They couldn't guard anybody standing still. I know that sounds corny, but it's the absolute God's honest truth. Their corners have been bad. D-line getting pushed around. So going into the game, Bill Belichick, all this cachet. I was thinking some of that might be resolved to a certain degree. My Lord, was I wrong? I don't know the stat. I don't have it on me. But there was a stat that was going around that North Carolina, after their opening offensive possession, didn't have a completed pass for a lengthy majority of time during that game. I don't want to lie to you and give you a number like, a quarter and a half. I don't know it for sure. I don't have it. But I can tell you, North Carolina went without getting a completed pass, mind you, for a significant amount of this game. They were awful. Awful. To the point, near the end of the game, Kirk Herbstreit had his dog in the booth with the headset on during the game because it was so boring. It was 40. What was it? The final score was 48-14. It was like 41-7 at one point. It was abysmal. The only reason why I was watching it is because I knew I was going to cover it, and it was the only game on at the time. Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick's stock, literally during this game, just Bill Belichick and North Carolina stock, period, during this game, was at an all-time high in the first, 30 minutes of the game, not meaning just when the game started, not actual game time, not 30 minutes worth, meaning 2 quarters, just like the first 30 minutes of the game. So from when kickoff started, kickoff was roughly like at 8:10. So from 8:10 to 8:40, North Carolina was riding at an all-time high. I mean, Bill Belichick and everybody's stock. Chapel Bill through the roof. But my Lord, 2 hours later, instead of having those conversations if Carolina's going to win the Natty, we're just having conversations right now if Carolina is going to win at least 3 or 4 games. Because that was awful. Awful. The defensive line getting out physicaled. Offensive line, when they were creating holes for the run game in that first possession, they couldn't block anybody after that first possession. I don't know if TCU was just on cruise control during that first drive. I don't know. But that offense that came out for the first drive of Carolina was, I need to put an APB out for him. We didn't even see a resemblance, not even a little speck of that offense for the rest of the game. And then TCU's defense just all of a sudden just wanted to play night steel curtain type defense against them. For Bill Belichick, Look, I'm going to cut him a break just slightly because out there on the field, the talent is not there. The DBs cannot cover anybody. Just looking at the stat sheet here, number 7, and I remember him vividly because I was paying attention to him all game. He had almost 140 yards receiving. He averaged 15 yards a catch on 9 receptions. He was eating all night. All night. Don't even get me started with the run game. They gave up 260 yards rushing. They averaged 7.5 yards a rush. Their longest rush being coming out of halftime. They scored on the first play of halftime. Mr. Curve Hurst, bless his heart, in the middle of the call. Just sitting there, calling the game is like, Carolina has to, in mid-sentence, he was like, Carolina has to get a stop on defense. And then they score and go 75 yards. It was just bad. All-time bad. I feel sorry for Kirk Herbstreit from having to travel from Ohio that morning. And then, we're talking about Saturday. Going from Ohio Saturday morning, then having to go all the way to South Carolina that night. I imagine over the weekend, he obviously maybe flied, but he might have. I imagine he flew. Take another flight to the Triangle down here in Raleigh, Chapel Hill, Duke area. Head to Chapel Hill and then have to call that abysmal game that he had to call. Now, granted, I know the money is probably fantastic, but it was just embarrassing. It was just literally so bad. Bill Belichick, again, I got to give him a break. He just doesn't have the personnel. Doesn't have the offensive line. Doesn't have the defense, period. I mean, them guys couldn't stop a cold yesterday. It was bad, ladies and gentlemen. That game, by the defensive point of view, is bad. Max Johnson, the quarterback that absolutely broke his leg last year against Minnesota, and I think it was the first game of the season for Carolina. He actually came in for Gio Lopez and did pretty good. He was 9 for 11, 103 yards, 9.4 yards per pass. He had a quarterback rating of 96. He was pretty decent. Outside of that, man, it was just rough. Carolina couldn't run the ball, averaged 1.8 yards a carry as a team. It was just all around terrible. The stands and the students, everybody was gone by halftime. It was just bad. I hope it gets better. Let's just take a look at Carolina's schedule. I'm scared. They play Charlotte. They should win that game. Richmond, they should win that game. UCF looked pretty good on Thursday in their opener. They could lose that game. They're going to lose against Clemson. Cal, I don't know. I'm not seeing a lot of W's on this schedule. I really don't. The way they played last night, now TCU is a Big 12 team. I get it. But man, the way they played last night, and I'm a Duke fan, obviously. I'm not about to harp on the football team because, I'm not about to sit here and make it sound like Duke's back in football, but Duke's got a pretty good football team. The way that quarterback looked the other night, they might give these Carolina boys a run for their money. But I do not see a lot of wins on that schedule for Carolina. It's absolutely abysmal by all counts. What do you guys think? Bill Belichick, again, I'm going to give him some slack. First year with that type of team. I don't know how the NIL money is looking in North Carolina for football. Again, I'm not an expert when it comes to NIL. I know they get a good amount for basketball. I don't know how it works on football. I don't know if they're sharing the sugar or not. But he's got to get some guys in there. He's got to get a quarterback. He's got to get an O-line and D-line if he's going to even think about competing for a national championship in the near future. He's going to have to. Because with that team he's got right now, they are not going to cut it. I'm sorry for any Carolina fan who spent an absolute fortune for those tickets last night, because I can imagine they weren't cheap by any standards. And those who bought, because, North Carolina's tickets were pretty much sold out. They were sold out for the rest of the season, pretty much. I'd imagine there's a lot of people who's probably wanting to get their tickets up for sale. But it was rough. It was rough. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think North Carolina has some problems in the near future? How many games do you think they're going to win? They would be lucky to win 4 games, in my opinion. I don't know. Again, I'm not an expert when it comes to some of these teams like Stanford. I don't know how good Stanford's going to be. I heard they're not going to be that good. Cal, I don't know how good any of these teams are. But man, the way North Carolina played yesterday, it's hard to see many dubs in their win column. I want to know all of your comments down below. All right, we are going to discuss one last team from the slate of college football this weekend, and we are going to talk about the Alabama Crimson Tide. Roll, Tide, roll. Not no more. Not no more. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Nick Saban is widely regarded at the present moment as one of probably the best college football coach of all time. Kalen DeBoer, head coach at Washington with Michael Penix, took them to the national championship and ended up losing to a very good Michigan team. He got the job. Nick Saban leaves. Nobody is shocked because Nick Saban has not been a fan of the NIL stuff the last couple of years when it first started. So Nick Saban took himself out of the door. The job is open. Kalen DeBoer takes it. Kalen DeBoer, last year in his first season at Alabama, has some very good wins, but had some very bad losses. Very, very bad. When it comes to Oklahoma, when Oklahoma wasn't good last year, Vanderbilt was the very alarming one. So there were a couple of teams that he lost to that was very questionable. And, a lot of people last season was like, man, is Kalen DeBoer ever going to live up to Nick Saban's stature, which is some very hard shoes to fill. So going into this game, it wasn't like my radar game. I saw they were playing Florida State. Florida State only won 2 games last year. So I wasn't expecting Florida State to do a lot. And we're talking about an Alabama team who I argued last year should have more than likely made the national championship playoff. I think they should have. But that's neither here nor there. Ty Simpson's the quarterback for Bama. I don't really know none of these players. I know Bernard's back. Ryan Williams is still there. But Ty Simpson's is the backup. He's sat, the last 3 seasons? 1 season under Bryce Young and then the past 2 under Jalen Milroe. And it's not all Ty Simpson's fault, but just Alabama as a whole looked pathetic. FSU, the way they played, the offense running the ball down Alabama's throat, defensive line getting after Ty Simpson, stuffing the run. FSU, Florida State looked like what Alabama should have looked like. They look like the Alabama we knew and loved over the last 20 years. They've been super successful. Alabama was abysmal. They were out physicaled on both sides of the ball in the trenches. That is unheard of for a Alabama-led team or an Alabama team. Biggest program in college football. The most historic outside of maybe Notre Dame college football program. Knows nothing but winning. Get the best recruits, got good NIL. But yet, a school like FSU, coming off a 2-win season last year, 2, with DJ Uiagalelei at quarterback, they were like ranked top 5 going into the first game of the season. They ended up unranked. That is how bad they were last year. And in their first game of the season, Tommy, how do you say the player's name? Tommy Castellanos, coming from BC, Boston College. I thought he was a pretty good kid. Pretty cool. Here is his stat line. He only threw the ball 14 times. 14 times. Threw 9 passes, 152 yards, averaged 11 yards per pass. As a team, Florida State ran for almost 5 yards a rush. Bama, Ty Simpson, 23 for 43, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Running the ball, only 3 yards per carry as a team. Ryan Williams, another no-show. They came out with a graphic during this game and was like, for some odd reason, the first 6 games of the season, Ryan Williams had almost 700 yards receiving in the first 6 games of the season. And in that latter half of the season, the last 5 games, he only had like 200 reception yards. And even yesterday, or Saturday rather, he was an absolute no-show. He was just a no-show. Offensively, Alabama looks like they have no identity. They don't know if they want to be a run-stopping type football team, a run-style type offense and football team, or if they're going to air it out. They could not run the football whatsoever and forced Ty Simpson to throw the ball 43 times. He was under duress all game. The offensive line couldn't block anybody. The game got away from Kalen DeBoer and Alabama really quick. And then at one point in the second half, the punt returner for Florida State ended up muffing the punt, hit his knee on accident, and then Alabama got the ball back, and we're just sitting here thinking, okay, this is Alabama's time to come back. And it didn't happen. It was just Alabama was out physical, showed no fight. But this has a lot to do with Kalen DeBoer. And it's an interesting stat that is out right now. This graphic is very appalling. Through just 14 games at Alabama, Kalen DeBoer has matched the unranked loss total Nick Saban tallied over 235 games. In a span of 14 games, Kalen DeBoer has lost 4 unranked games. I don't even know the math. Let's look this up. 235 divided by 14. So basically, I don't even know if that's probably correct. Let's just say in 221, there's a 221 game difference to when Nick Saban lost 4 unranked games to when Kalen DeBoer lost 2 unranked games. That stat there, ladies and gentlemen, is absolutely appalling. If I am an Alabama fan, I'm not happy. The county of Tuscaloosa, the city of Tuscaloosa, should not be happy. A lot of people now are saying Kalen DeBoer is on the hot seat. A lot of people is calling for his job. Mind you, if I'm correct, I've seen his buyout. Kalen DeBoer has a $70 million buyout. That is money that I know the boosters in Alabama is not willing to pay. So Kalen DeBoer, unless the season just goes absolutely backwards, he's staying at Alabama. Kalen DeBoer had some huge shoes to fill. We're talking about a guy, Nick Saban. The Nick Saban. I do not specifically know how many national championships he won at Alabama. I'm not 100% certain. I'm trying to look it up right now. If somebody in the chat will just let me know right fast, maybe, but I'm just looking right now. It's not looking it up, but we know we don't. I don't need the specific number of natties that Nick Saban won. Okay, we all know Nick Saban was very, 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 very successful at Alabama. Literally going into the season each year, expectations were national championship. At worst, you should be an SEC champion, then get to the first round of playoffs, and then lose. That was the expectation for Alabama year in, year out under the tenure of Nick Saban. Now with Kalen DeBoer, they missed the playoffs the very first year, and already to start off the season, they are already in danger of not making the playoff again. Granted, preseason poll, FSU was unranked. I don't know how the Associated Press does the rankings. I don't know. Maybe this team is a whole lot better than what the media and Associated Press made Florida State out to be. Absolutely, because the season before, Florida State was in contention. It arguably should have been in contention for the national championship. They were unbeaten. They were like 13-0, but they didn't end up getting the honors. But if you're an Alabama fan, and if you live in Tuscaloosa currently, heads and eyebrows are raised because this is a huge problem. Alabama's schedule is not going to get any better. They got a tune-up game next week, LA Monroe. But let's look at the remainder of their schedule. They got UL Monroe next week. You got Wisconsin. You still got to play Georgia. You got to play Tennessee. You got to play LSU. You got to play South Carolina. Got to play Oklahoma. Got to play Auburn. Their schedule is pretty brutal. And the way the 12-team playoff is pretty much set up, you cannot lose more than 3 games. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know how many losses did Alabama have last year. I think it was 4. Oh, so Alabama only had 3 losses last year, and they didn't get in. So minimum, you can only have 3 losses. And even then, it's like you can't have 3 losses. You can only have 2 to get into the college football playoff. So literally, Alabama they can only afford to lose to Georgia. Out of these teams, Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina, Oklahoma, all these teams are ranked. They can only afford to lose 1. So they have to go 3-1 against those teams and beat all the other unranked teams, Eastern Illinois, Auburn, Missouri, Vanderbilt, who beat them last year, which Alabama should beat them this year, and Wisconsin. If Alabama does not make the playoff this year, there are going to be a lot, and I mean a lot, of unhappy fans. And I would not be surprised if they would relieve Kalen DeBoer of his services at the end of this year. Would not be surprised at all. This is embarrassing. If I was Kalen DeBoer, to even see that stat about Nick Saban only losing 4 unranked games in 235 games, and yet you've lost the same amount in 14 games, is very, very appalling. Give him some, and something else to happen. Tommy Costello, however you say his name, forgive me. He went into the game, and I'm going to look it up because I'm curious myself. He had a quote, and here it is. I found it. He said this quote on national TV in front of the media. They don't have Nick Saban to save them. I just don't see them stopping me. This isn't the full quote, but this is essentially just a portion of the quote that he made before the game, going into the game. Alabama knew this, and yet The guy went out there and done whatever he wanted to Alabama. Whatever he wanted to. And there's a lot of video out there showing lack of hustle, a whole lot of alarming things that a team led by Nick Saban would not be happening. Do you think a team led by Nick Saban is going to have questions about being physical, hustling, playing elite brand of football? Absolutely not. But yet we are having these questions about a Kalen DeBoer-led Alabama football team. And it is a problem. So, Kalen DeBoer, I know you got some big shoes to fill. But you are the head coach for arguably the most historic and most prized program in the history of college football, the Alabama Crimson Tide. A lot of high expectations, and you are not meeting them whatsoever. So, Kalen DeBoer needs to be on the lookout because he is potentially on the hot seat right now as we speak. Alabama needs to get it together because they are not the team, the Alabama that us fans grew up to know and to love. That is all I have to say about that, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think? Do you think this was an absolutely pathetic loss by Alabama? Do you think FSU was just that good? Was this game more about FSU winning or Alabama losing? I want to know all of your comments down below. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are fixing to move on to our next portion of sports and our last sports topic, and we are going to discuss Micah Parsons. So, unless you've been living under a rock, Micah Parsons, at this present moment, is a Green Bay Packer. He was traded to the Dallas Cowboys last Thursday, approximately 5 days ago, for 2 first-round picks and the big boy in the middle, Kenny Clark. Micah Parsons had his very first practice yesterday as a Green Bay Packer. And as of yesterday, there was some news that came up in the media about Micah Parsons' injury. Because there was a lot of questions going on if this injury was even real. Was this just about the contract negotiations, this and that? I never thought it was fake. I always thought it was real. So we just pretty much got confirmed that in a report by Adam Schefter. Micah Parsons has been dealing with an L4, L5 facet joint sprain in his back and he may take an epidural injection prior to Sunday's game versus the Lions if needed to help him play. Before trading Parsons last week, the Cowboys prescribed him a 5-day plan of an anti-inflammatory corticosteroid, a prednisone, to help him recover from back tightness. They also had him on a physical therapy program. Parsons has been practicing this week, and he is still trying to play in Sunday's opener versus the Lions, though one source said it is still uncertain if he will play. And there is an article written here. It doesn't go into much better detail than how Adam Schefter put it. It only pretty much highlighted that he was a limited participant in practice on Monday. And there were some quotes about players talking about Micah Parsons being part of the team, this and that. But we're not going to dive deep into that. Let's just talk about the injury itself. I thought the injury was always real. I didn't think he was never fake. One thing about Micah Parsons, he loves football. Okay? So he's not going to find a reason to be off the football field, because I thought it was, even though he was going into contract negotiations and things of that nature, it was very alarming to me that Micah Parsons would just automatically say that, the first couple of days of training camp, he's practicing, although he wasn't practicing in full capacity. He was practicing somewhat and said he was part of his guys, and then all of a sudden just stopped practicing like 2 or 3 days later after he said that. I always knew there was probably something going on there with his back. And we saw the photos last week of him heading to the airport. Looks like he's getting ready to board a plane, and, with all the trade rumors going around. So the injury is real. He has a lower lumbar issue going on. Now, if I was to advise the Green Bay Packers and the fans everywhere, do not rush him back. Because there's one thing in the body that when you mess up, it is hard, and I mean it is hard to get it back functioning right and to be able to function, period, is that back. That back is no joke. I don't think you should rush him back. I think you should heal his back in any type of, what's the word I'm trying to look for here? Natural way possible is the right term to use, and a natural way. Not with steroids. Steroids are just I don't know the right term I want to use here, but steroids is just a little thing you would use to stop the bleeding. It's pretty much the tissue when you're trying to stop your nose bleeding. Your nose is still going to bleed, but the tissue keeps it from going everywhere. That shot, that epidural that Micah's going to get, it's going to make everything feel all good and nice when you get it. But after that game, when it wears off, it's going to feel like that back is going to feel like absolute crap. Probably even worse than what it felt like before you even took it and got on the field and started to perform. Go ask Rob Gronkowski how those steroids feel. He literally retired just because his body was so beat up and he took so many steroids and injections in his knees and lower extremities to keep his body functioning so he could perform at a significantly high level. Micah Parsons is playing the defensive line position. He is getting contact on his body every single rep. This isn't a quarterback to where, snaps the ball. There is not a chance of him getting hit every rep. Micah Parsons is playing the defensive line position. The primary strength that he endures on his opponent when he's rushing the passer, he is utilizing his back mechanism. He's using compound movements, which is going to activate every specific muscle in the body to be able to perform his exercise at a specific high level. That requires a lot of the back. And that lower back is something you definitely don't want to play with. And that's why he has L4 and L5, lower lumbar. So if I am the Green Bay Packers, I think my team is good enough and should be good enough to be able to beat the Detroit Lions at home opening weekend in Lambeau without Micah Parsons. This is your Ferrari. This is your Lamborghini. This is what you invested 2 first-round picks in a player for, because we are thinking as an organization, as the team, we are thinking about the long game. We are thinking about winning a Super Bowl. You cannot win a Super Bowl when your best player is hurt and he's not available. You're playing with fire, putting Micah Parsons out there on the field. Now, if there's any natural way he can play without getting any type of steroids, I'm 100% for it. But I just do not believe in rushing Micah Parsons back. In the videos that they showed of practice on yesterday, he looked pretty good. I don't know. Micah Parsons is still trying to get back into football shape. He has not done a lot of practice in pads. I don't even know if he even had pads on as of yesterday during practice. So Micah Parsons is not in football shape at the moment. So I don't think it would be very premature for me, in my opinion, to put Micah Parsons out there on the field when he isn't 100% football ready physically and he's not 100% healthy. That is just my 2 cents into that. That's what I would do if I'm the Green Bay Packers. That's what I would want the Cowboys to do if he was still playing for my Dallas Cowboys. So there's my 2 cents on that. I just want Micah to be healthy, and I want him to be able to perform at a very high level. So that is pretty much all I really have to say about that. There was some interesting contract stuff that went on with David Mulligetta on First Take. Like I said, we're possibly going to discuss that in tomorrow's show. We're going to have a small show about that. And I'll discuss the Dallas Cowboys and things of that nature. So what do you think? Do you think Micah Parsons should play on Sunday? Do you think he should take a steroid? Should he take the epidural? Should he not? Should he just do it naturally, physical therapy and things of that nature? I want to know all of your comments down below. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going on to our very last topic of tonight. Thank you for all my football fans who have tuned in. I'm going to discuss some pop culture things now to close out this evening's show. All right. Mr. Alan Ritchson, a very prominent figure in the DC fans world, in the pop culture media world of fancasts in regards to casting the DCU's Batman. So I was working this weekend and, scrolling through the Twitter world, and there was an article. Obviously, Alan Ritchson got interviewed by Variety, and he pretty much confirmed that he has discussed with James Gunn about taking the role of the Caped Crusader himself in the DCU and Batman. And here's what he had to say by Variety. And this is the reporter in the bold text here asking him the question. Speaking of what you've got coming, there are some Batman rumors doing the rounds online following some comments from James Gunn about him being a fan of yours. Are you aware of this? Alan Ritchson went on to say, well, it's not rumor that James Gunn is a fan. He said it himself. And I am, and am I a fan of James Gunn? Absolutely. I don't want to mislead people. Words have been exchanged about Batman, but I strongly don't think that Batman is in my future. I do think there is something in my future with DC, and I would like that to remain true. All right, so what does this potentially mean for the casting of Batman? Let's put the Robert Pattinson stuff to rest. James Gunn is looking for somebody to play Batman. And I do think if Alan Ritchson didn't get the job, and if James Gunn didn't want to consider him to play the role, I have an idea that James Gunn probably already knows what he wants and who he is potentially looking at to be cast as the Batman in the DCU. Or this may be a thing to where what James Gunn has said in the past about him not wanting to start castings and all that stuff until you got a good script and things of that nature, because we do know that the DCU's Batman script and all that is not quite done right yet. James Gunn has been in the media talking about this vividly, saying he doesn't quite know where he wants the DCU's Batman story to go at the moment. I imagine he is having some very troubling time trying to deviate and make it and differentiate essentially the difference between Robert Pattinson's Batman and the upcoming DCU Batman. But that's neither here nor there. So I do think that James Gunn might have an idea who he wants to play, who he wants to cast as the Caped Crusader and Batman. But kind of sucks. Alan Ritchson was like one of my top 3 that I would want to play Batman. If you have not watched him in Reacher, he looks like an absolute specimen of a man. I think he could potentially knock out definitely the Batman part and the Bruce Wayne part. He has the look. he just looks like a superhero. The man just needs to play some superhero. He needs to play some superhero role in the DC universe or Marvel. He's got to get a job. The man is just absolutely jacked. He did play Aquaman in Smallville years ago. I would love James Gunn to possibly entertain that in the future with maybe him playing Aquaman in the DCU. I would have totally be down to that. But now it's a little, heartbreaking. I wouldn't say heartbreaking. It's a little disappointing to already know that James Gunn has pretty much knocked that idea out. I just think Alan Ritchson, he just has the look for just playing a person and a comic book character like Batman. It kind of sucks. But I don't know. I don't know who he could possibly have in the conversations with as playing Batman. We've seen the casting rumors. Alan Ritchson has been part of it. The guy who plays in The Boys, and he actually voice act Batman in the animated series stuff for DC. I think it's Jensen Ackles. He's been in consideration for it. There's another guy who's been in consideration for it. So there's been some names along with Alan Ritchson. They've been surfacing the internet for being in consideration for being the Batman. But we've already got one saying it isn't going to happen. So it's going to be interesting to see how the casting breaks down. And another argument you can make about this is, maybe he's still thinking about the DC Robert Pattinson thing. I don't think he is. I think that James Gunn has been very just vocal about this. He's not doing Robert Pattinson's Batman in the same universe as the DCU. It's just not happening. I don't think it should happen because I'm beating a dead horse here, and I've said it multiple times. I like the idea of Robert Pattinson's Batman universe. I think it's special and unique in its own right, and I just don't think it would be able to mesh in the same DC universe with the Superman that we currently have with David Cornsweet. I don't even see Robert Pattinson and David Cornsweet's characters having good chemistry on camera. It's the world's finest. It needs to be very good when it comes to dynamic and chemistry. So it's good to see that James Gunn looks like he may be doing the rounds to casting the character. But one name has already been knocked out of the list to play Batman. It's going to be interesting to see. I do imagine we may possibly be getting some casting rumors. Maybe, I would say, after Christmas. I think after Christmas is like a very, very good timetable and timeline, I could say, and consider, and be very, what's the word I'm looking for? I can be very certain that we may be hearing stuff about Batman and potentially Wonder Woman and some casting updates and, James Gunn getting the screenwriting done, screenplay, scripts done, all that good jazz, and they're just moving on to the casting portion of production. But we're just going to have to wait and see. That is just my quick thoughts on that. I just wanted to hit on it. I saw it in the media, and I just wanted to give my quick 2 cents on that to end off tonight's show. What do you guys think? Does it suck that Alan Ritchson is pretty much already confirmed that he spoke with James Gunn about playing Batman, but he's pretty much been cut out of that? Who do you think should play Batman? I want to know all of your comments down below. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me for tonight's show. It was very short notice. I didn't 100% plan. Well, I'm lying. I kind of planned coming on Tuesday night. I remember Friday I announced I was going live at some point. I don't remember if it was Monday or Tuesday. If I said it was Monday, I was absolutely lying. There was no way I was going to be able to get to a show on Monday, yesterday on Labor Day. But I got to you tonight, and I was ready and ecstatic to discuss the full slate of college football over the weekend. I'm going to meet with you guys tomorrow, and I'm going to have some graphics and everything updated, so forgive me. I needed to get the show done today. I had school, long day at school. I didn't have time to do the graphics, and I didn't want to film my show at 9 o'clock at night. I didn't want to do it. I wanted to go ahead and get it done so I can have me some dinner here in a few and get my stuff done for tomorrow and have everything prepped and ready to go. So I will have everything graphics and all that will be on the show tomorrow. I promise you that. So unless I see something about pop culture tomorrow, tomorrow's show should primarily be about the Dallas Cowboys, mostly going into Thursday night, what to expect, things of that nature, and things that I want to see. So we're just going to discuss that and some things that happened with the meeting on First Take this morning with David Mulligata and Stephen A. Smith on their little interview, and I'm just going to give my 2 cents on that. But ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the end of the show. Hit the like button on the show. If you haven't already, checked out my show, The Jayden Bryce Show, on Spotify and Apple Podcast. And check my description down below to check out all my other videos as well. And most importantly, guys, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I thank you for your continued love and support, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day, those who are tuning in, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace, love, and positivity always, y'all. See you.